I don't know about you, but when I was young and would complain to my parents about something or other, one of them would inevitably say, if you keep that up, I'll really give you something to worry about. And, you know, for them, I think that was their way of trying to get a kid to understand or to get a sense of perspective. I don't think kids are very good at it, but I guess, you know, you've got to start somewhere. Consider you've got a really bad headache and that's all that you can think about is that bad headache until such time as you hit your thumb with a hammer and suddenly all thoughts of headaches are banished. And I think while we tend to believe that we're pretty good at multitasking, I actually don't think that's the case. I think that what we tend to do, I think, is focus on the most critical thing. You know, whether that be something that your parents give you to worry about, or the crack on the thumb with the hammer, or something else. More on that later. Let me show you something. As you can see, I've just walked right through what used to be mesh. We pulled the mesh down off here because we're going to remesh it and turn it into a garden area rather than a chook house. When we first did that, this dog who's standing over there, you can't quite see her, but Millie came in here, and then I was standing out there and I called her, and instead of coming out through there, she came out through this gate, even though there was nothing to stop her coming out through where the fence used to be. Now, I don't know about you, but I tend to take every little thing that might happen as an opportunity to learn something. And from that, I learned that for Millie, the fence still existed, even though it wasn't there. And from that we can determine, I think, for we as humans, because we do a similar thing, that sometimes we're limited by our perception of how things are rather than how they really are. So in other words, we do things in a particular way because we've always done them that way, because we know it's safe to do them that way, and we won't run into the fence. I'd like to say that I've been doing stuff in the bus, but the fact is that I actually haven't. It's been mighty hot since I made that last video, which was the beginning of December. I spoke about it being around 32 degrees. Well, it's been in excess of that for the last couple of months. 34, 35, 36 degrees outside. That means that inside the bus here, it can be about 1,000 degrees Celsius. Anyway, whatever it is, it's excruciatingly hot and not really conducive to kind of doing work in the bus. But I have been doing a few things around the yard despite the phenomenal heat, such as, for example, this. and this. Now, the one thing that I did want to talk about, and this explains things possibly a little better. I mentioned in that last video about distractions, you know, and I had a trip to New Zealand in, I think it was about August. Then a trip to Tasmania in the end of November, early December. And I mentioned in that video that I made when I came back about some of those distractions. And one thing I did want to talk about was, as indicated right in the intro of this video, that sometimes things come along and they kind of just fill your mind, you know, you become preoccupied with them. And that is that, and maybe I'll just give you the whole backstory. About a year and a half ago, I had a blood test, and it indicated that I had a slightly high PSA reading. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, I don't either, but no, it actually means something like prostate specific something. You can Google the term anyway, but it is something that's almost inevitable for older men. And that is that we have issues with our prostate. You know, now, as I understand it, prostate cancer is more common for men than breast cancer is for women. But when it comes to prostate cancer, if you're going to get cancer, that's certainly one of the better ones, in the sense that it tends to be slowly developing. So it's often said that most men will die with prostate cancer rather than from prostate cancer, because it develops very slowly and for the most part doesn't really impact on anything other than, I mean, the usual sort of waterworks issues. But all of us get those, you know, no matter what gender we are or what age we are. Well, I shouldn't say what age we are, rather that as we get older, you know, they do become issues for us. Anyway, I had this blood test. I had a secondary blood test 4 weeks after that to confirm it wasn't just an anomaly, that the PSA level was rising. I was referred for a bunch of things, you know, including an ultrasound, followed by another blood test, followed by an MRI, followed by a CAT scan, followed by, I think, what's called a PT scan, followed by a prostate biopsy. And anyway, from all of that, it's been determined that I do have prostate cancer. Now, I don't say that in order to garner any sympathy or pity, because, like I said, all men will eventually, if they live long enough, be confronted with this issue. Rather than to say that it does tend to become a preoccupation, though, you know, is that you spend a lot of time thinking about such things, and it's inevitable when any of us is told that, well, sorry to have to tell you this, but you've got cancer, that you're going to worry, you know, whatever the prognosis is, what's the likelihood of even surviving up until the time of making another video, etc., etc. So I tell you this only because I kind of feel that, you know, when you make these videos, you kind of get to know people, and I feel like I have a responsibility to tell anyone who's been following me that that's the issue. And that is also an issue which, of course, apart from the savage heat, has slowed down the video making. And then to add to all of that, when I went to New Zealand in August, it was to visit my brother who is ailing. Now, he is older than me, and so if I'm an old bugger, he's a really old bugger. And he's taken a turn for the worse. So, in fact, he's currently in hospital as we speak, and sometime in the next week or so I might see if I can organise another trip to New Zealand to see him. I spoke with the doctor at the hospital where he is. They anticipate that he'll be going home, but it doesn't mean that he'll be well. You know, it means that he'll just be going home, and, you know, from where he'll probably need to get some kind of, you know, home care or help, you know, because it's very difficult when it falls on a partner to try and do those things when you don't necessarily have the skills or the training, and of course you've got other stuff that you've got to do, such as go to work. You know, that's not to mean you abandon all responsibility, but someone's got to keep paying the rent. Anyway, I can report that with the bus build that, as you know, I sold the wheelchair hoist, removed all the seats. All of the seats have now been sold, which is a good thing. And the next job from here will be to remove this ducting. I don't know whether you can see this above me, but the ducting above my head, which runs down the side of the bus. And the reason I'm looking over here is that I've just seen Millie over here, so I'm thinking that it's time for Millie and me to have another cup of tea, and then we'll see you next time.
Nothing's gonna harm you, babe. I said, honey, nothing's ever gonna let you down. Oh, I just wanna do it. Hush, baby, 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 baby. No, no, no.